You hear a sound behind. You hear a sound behind you? Just a sound. A door closing, a branch snapping, a footstep that wasn't there a second ago. And before your mind has even formed a single conscious thought, your body has already responded. Heart rate up, muscles tightened, eyes wide, every nerve ending suddenly paying attention. That happened in less than a quarter of a second, and you had absolutely no say in it. Here is the strange part. There is no predator. There is no threat. You are standing in your kitchen, or walking through a parking garage, or sitting in the dark watching a movie. Nothing is hunting you. Nothing has been hunting anyone you know for generations. But your brain does not know that. It never quite got the update. What you just felt, that electric spike of alertness, that primal surge, is a system so old it predates language, predates fire, predates everything you would recognize as human civilization. It is older than your species, and it is running inside you right now, today, shaping your thoughts, your decisions, and your fears in ways you have never stopped to examine. The real question is not why it exists. The real question is what it is doing to you in a world it was never designed for. To understand that, you need to go back. A long way back. 2 million years ago, your ancestors were not at the top of the food chain. They were in the middle of it. Homo habilis, one of the earliest members of the genus Homo, was roughly the size of a modern 10-year-old, walked partially upright, and had a brain not much larger than a chimpanzee's. And every single day, that creature faced something you will never face in your entire life. The genuine, immediate possibility of being eaten. Saber-toothed cats, hyenas, giant eagles with talons wide enough to carry a small hominid into the air. The fossil record is not subtle about this. Paleoanthropologist Lee Berger and his team found the remains of Australopithecus africanus with talon marks on the skull, consistent with a large raptor picking up a child and flying off. This was not metaphor, this was Tuesday. In that world, your nervous system had one job that overrode every other function in the body. Do not get killed. And the system it built to accomplish that job is called the sympathetic nervous system, the engine behind what stress physiologist Walter Cannon first named the fight-or-flight response in 1915. Cannon discovered that when animals perceived a threat, a cascade of hormones, primarily adrenaline and cortisol, flooded the body in milliseconds, before conscious thought was even possible. Pupils dilated. Blood routed away from the digestive system and toward the muscles. Breathing accelerated. Pain sensitivity dropped. Your body converted itself instantly from a creature that ate and rested and thought into a creature built purely for one of two things: run or fight. That system saved your ancestors' lives, hundreds of thousands of times, over millions of years. Every time it fired correctly, every time it yanked your ancestor's body into action before the predator could close the gap, that ancestor survived, and eventually produced you. Here is the critical thing Cannon understood, and that neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux later mapped in extraordinary detail. This system does not wait for confirmation. It cannot afford to. In his research on the amygdala, the almond-shaped structure deep in your brain that processes fear, Ledoux showed that the threat signal travels to the amygdala along two separate pathways simultaneously. One path is fast and dirty, sending a rough, imprecise signal that bypasses the cortex entirely. The other path is slower and more accurate, running through your rational thinking brain. The fast path fires first. Always. Your body is already reacting before you know what you are reacting to. By the time your cortex catches up and says, "Wait, it was just a door," the adrenaline is already in your bloodstream. The cortisol is already rising. The system has already done its job. And that design made perfect sense for the Pleistocene savanna. If you waited for full cognitive confirmation before fleeing a lion, you were dead. Evolution ruthlessly pruned every individual who was slow to react and kept every individual who was fast, even if being fast meant occasionally flinching at shadows. There is a name for this in evolutionary biology. It is called the smoke detector principle, coined by psychiatrist Randolph Nesse. A smoke detector is calibrated to go off at the first sign of smoke. not after the fire is confirmed. That means it will occasionally scream at your burned toast, but the cost of a false alarm is low. The cost of missing a real fire is catastrophic. So the alarm is set sensitive. Very, very sensitive. Your threat detection system is set the same way. It is not designed to be accurate. It is designed to be fast and cautious, to produce false positives by the hundreds, if TGAT is what it takes to catch the one genuine threat. And for 2 million years, in a world full of actual threats, that calibration was correct. But the world changed faster than your brain could follow. Agriculture began roughly 12,000 years ago. Cities appeared. The large predators that once hunted your ancestors were pushed back, fenced out, or driven to extinction. For the first time in the history of your lineage, you no longer needed to scan the grass every few seconds for a shape that moved wrong. 12,000 years is nothing in evolutionary time. It is less than 600 human generations. Natural selection, working at the pace it works, cannot restructure a nervous system in 600 generations. Not when that system was so central to survival for the millions of years before. So you are carrying hardware that is 2 million years old, running in a world that is 12,000 years old, navigating problems that are barely 50 years old. And the smoke detector is still going off. It does not go off for saber-toothed cats anymore. It goes off for your inbox, for the unanswered message, for the silence after you say something at a meeting and nobody responds, for the way someone's tone shifted on the phone, for the news, cycling through threats every 30 minutes, for a deadline, for a stranger's facial expression. None of these things can kill you, but your amygdala does not know that. It was never taught the difference between a predator behind you in the dark and a notification that your boss wants to talk. Neuroscientist Amy Arnsten at Yale has spent decades studying what happens to the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, planning, and decision-making, when the stress response fires. Her research shows that even mild, sustained stress causes the prefrontal cortex to lose influence over behavior. The more stressed you are, the more your behavior is driven by older, more automatic systems, the more you react, and the less you think. This is not weakness. It is ancient architecture doing exactly what it was built to do. In a genuine emergency, you do not want to stop and deliberate. But in the modern world, where the stress response fires dozens of times a day in response to things that will not eat you, you end up making more impulsive decisions, seeing threats where none exist, and feeling a low hum of danger that never quite goes away. That hum has a name. You probably call it anxiety. Anxiety is not a malfunction. It is your predator detection system running on targets it was never designed for. It is your very effective, very ancient, very well-calibrated threat alarm going off in a world where most of the threats are invisible, social, and chronic, rather than physical, acute, and real. Think about what that means for your daily life. The fear of public speaking, reported by more people than the fear of death in most surveys, is not irrational when you understand the brain. Standing alone, exposed, in front of a group of people who are all looking at you, evaluating you, with nowhere to hide. That is exactly what being spotted by a predator felt like. Your body does not care that they are holding notebooks. It cares that you are exposed. The way you replay a social mistake over and over at night, the thing you said wrong, the way someone looked at you, is your threat detection system refusing to let go. Because in the ancestral environment, social mistakes had survival consequences. Getting rejected from the group meant dying alone. The feeling that something terrible is about to happen, with no specific reason, that is your smoke detector going off on nothing, calibrated so sensitive that sometimes it fires in the absence of any signal at all. You are, in the truest sense, a creature built for a world that no longer exists. And every time your heart rate spikes at a shadow, every time a harsh email ruins your afternoon, every time you lie awake at 3 a.m. with a nameless dread, you are feeling the echo of 2 million years of being hunted. The question is not whether you can turn this system off. You cannot. It is structural. It is you. The question is whether you can learn to see it clearly, to recognize the moment the smoke detector fires and ask calmly, is this toast or is this fire? to give your slow, accurate cortex the chance to catch up before you react, to understand that the animal inside you is not broken, it is just old. Tonight, when a sound makes you jump, when your chest tightens over something that cannot hurt you, remember, that is not weakness. That is the unbroken chain of every ancestor who was fast enough, alert enough, scared enough to survive long enough to have you. You are here because they never stopped being afraid. And neither, it seems, will you.